You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better. Put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 18th part of What If Deku and Hero Academia Joins Power Rangers. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Unforeseen simulation joint afternoon. A minute had passed by and the buses stop in front of a large dome-like building, with everyone getting off the bus at the front entrance to be greeted by 13 who was already there waiting for them. Hello everyone. I've been waiting for you. 13 said as most of the students were surprised to see this hero here in person. It's the space hero, 13. The chivalrous pro who has rescued tons of people from disasters across the world. Midoriya said with excitement, as inner fanboy was geeking out again. Woohoo! 13 is one of my favorite heroes. Uraraka squealed with the same level of excitement. Same here. She's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a pro someday. Juzo said in agreement with the gravity girl. I can't wait to show you what's inside. 13 said pointing at the doors of the USJ. Please everyone, this way. She said before walking inside the facility. This is gonna be awesome. The classes said together with them following behind the rescue hero. Once they were in the building, all the students were blown away and amazed by the sight of the facility and its size. There were buildings, mountains, waterfalls, and 2 mini domes in it. How much money does UA even have to be able to make this? Holotami thought as he wondered how much it cost to build this place. It's huge. Kuroka yelled out as she dispelled her cat form. Wow! It looks so appealing. Kinoko said in awe, as she was breathtaken by the view. Multiple things in one place. I can keep on looking through the area for the whole month. Sen said in excitement. Scylla groaned out as she'd seen better. Holy CRP. It's like a theme park here. Kirishima said in awe. The natural disasters looked more like an amusement park rather than a training ground, Sato said looking all over the place with amazement. Aways whistled at the sight. DMN, this looks awesome. He exclaimed. This is getting so fun. Toru said as she couldn't wait to start. A training area? It sounds like a perfect practice for the Lightspeed Rangers, but 13 should have created a simulation training room like the SPD Rangers, Ren stated in thought. But I guess the people in our world doesn't really care about upgrading technologies much, except for the support items, since quirks are everything here. He thought about later asking his robot friends to make them a special training area like this one. 13 then moved to the front of the group before pointing out each of the zones. A shipwreck, a landslide, a fire, a windstorm, etc. I created this facility to train in different disasters. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. But you can call it the USJ. 13 explained with great pride in her voice. Just like Universal Studios Japan. Most of the students thought with deadpan expressions. I'm surprised UA didn't get sued for copyright infringement. Holotami thought as he wondered how UA managed to get away with most of the stuff they do. Shouldn't All Might be here already? Aizawa asked as he and Vlad were walking to 13 noticing that someone wasn't there. Yes. He was supposed to be here before us. Vlad King said curiously as well. Let me guess, he booked an interview instead. Aizawa asked her in annoyance. Actually it's something else. 13 said walking up close to them. Apparently he did too much hero work on the way to school this morning and he used up all his power. So he's resting in the teacher's lounge. She whispered to them while also raising 3 fingers. That man is the height of irresponsibility. Aizawa commented about All Might's behavior. Well, it should be okay with just the 3 of us here looking after things. Vlad King said as they didn't really need him here. Right, clock's ticking, we should get started. Aizawa said with a nod as he and Vlad King moved out of the way to let 13 take over the class. Excellent. Before we begin, let me just say one thing, well maybe 2 things, possible 3, 4 or 5. 13 began before she trailed off. We get it. Most of the students said with a bit of annoyance, as the excitement mode was brought down a bit. I swear if you go all the way to 13 I'm leaving. You can fail me for all I care. Bakugou shouted at the pro hero, as he was already annoyed with this day as is. Okay. 13 awkwardly said before clearing her throat to continue. Listen carefully, I'm sure you're aware that I have a powerful quirk, she said holding up her right hand in front of the class. It's called Black Hole. I can use it to SCK up anything and turn it to dust. The Black Hole. I'm grateful that this person is a hero. Kuroka stated in thought, who was shocked at the space hero's destructible quirk. Otherwise, she would have dealt a lot of damage in the city. It would probably be hard for anyone to even fight her. That's a dangerous power this human has. Scylla thought while looking at the space hero with narrow eyes. Yeah, you've used Black Hole to save people from all kinds of disasters before, haven't you? Midoriya stated with joy, as Uraraka was also familiar with it, nodding her head up and down in a frantic manner. That's true. But my quirk could also very easily be used to kill. 13 said as the 2 energetic students were snapped out of their happy-go-lucky state of mind with their smiles fading entirely. Furthermore, this also made some of the other students slightly gasp in surprise and particularly drawn to her statement about how her power could be used to kill someone. Some of you also have powers that could be dangerous. In our superhuman society, all quirks are certified and strictly regulated. So we often overlook how unsafe it can actually be. Please don't forget that if you lose focus or make the wrong move your powers can be deadly. Even if you're trying to do something virtuous like rescue someone. She stated with each of the students listening closely to her words of wisdom. Just like our ranger powers and tech if we don't hold back. Ren thought while gazing down at his MSTR morpher. Ren found himself frowning too, but not stunned at the teacher's words like everyone else but at his class. Information like that should be a given. Accidents happen in their chosen line of work, Ren knew that. However, his class seemed to have completely forgotten about that. Ida's kick could easily snap someone's neck, Midoriya's punches could easily turn someone's insides into mush, Uraraka's quirk could send someone out of orbit, Yui could enlarge objects that could crush someone, Juzo's quirk could bury someone alive, Kamakiri blades can cut through someone easily, even Mineta and Shiozaki's quirks could be used to suffocate someone if needed to. And it's also no different with the powers of the Power Rangers as well. Holotami had the same thoughts as his student. As much as Holotami knew that none of them would ever bother, let alone consider doing it, but it was a reality they had to face someday. It was good that they were learning of it early. Thanks to Aizawa and Vlad King's fitness tests, you have a solid idea of your quirk's potential. And because of All Might's combat training, you likely experienced how dangerous your powers can be when used against other people. Carry those lessons over to this class. Today, you're going to learn how to use your quirks to save people's lives. You won't be using your powers to attack enemies or each other, only to help. After all, that's what being a hero is all about. Ensuring the safety of others. 13 said to the students, as most of the class felt inspired by their teacher's speech. 13 is so cool. I just hope one day I can reach that same level too. Midoriya complimented with his eyes shining from the pro's words. Being a hero isn't about being the best or fighting the bad guys, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Which is why I became a ranger, to begin with. Ren thought with a savage grin while gripping his fist in determination. She's quite inspirational. She could be a leader material of a ranger team with those words alone. Holotommy thought while smiling. She was totally right, these great powers come with great responsibilities and as such must be used to protect people and not abuse them for self-gain. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening. 13 finished her speech while bowing and stretched her arms to the class. Most of the teenagers cheered and applauded for such an inspiring speech. Even the Black Nekashu and Aetherius were impressed by the space hero's very inspirational speech despite not caring about heroism at all. Right, Aizawa said to his students pointing at the plaza. Now that's that over dash, but the man was cut off by something unexpected. Completely out of nowhere, all of the power in the facility started to go hayward with the lights in the building flickering much to everyone's surprise. Then suddenly, a weird breeze of wind blew past Ren's face making him look petrified with his eyes widened, as he felt a sense of danger in the air. This same feeling. Ren thought as this was the same feeling he had during the break-in last week. But before Ren could say anything, a black vortex suddenly twisted into existence right at the front of the fountain in the middle of the USJ's plaza. This did not go unnoticed by the two homeroom teachers, as both Aizawa and Vlad King with their eyes widened in concern and shock before turning their heads back down to the center of the area where the portal of darkness appeared. Ran, Midoriya, Yui, Kendo, Owaze, Momo, Tokoyami, Jairu, Scylla, and Kuroka also did the same as the two heroes as their instincts were alerting them to the approaching danger. The black vortex began to expand larger before taking the shape of a black mist person with bright yellow eyes that appeared to be Kurojairi. Then a hand emerged from Kurojairi's warp gate, with the figure stepping out of the black mist and showing itself to Tamura with hands all over his body. The teachers, Power Rangers, Nekashu, and Aetherius instincts immediately kicked in. Whatever this was, whoever emerged from that portal, they were most definitely not friendly. That black vortex? Ren thought in shock and immediately knew who it was. It's them. The ones from the break-in. Aizawa narrowed his eyes in great concern before shifting his attention to his students. All of you. Stay together and don't move no matter what. He ordered the kids with an urgent tone. Huh. Everyone except for the Hero Force Rangers, Scylla, and Kuroka were confused by what he said. They all knew this wasn't a good sign because of their experience in already being in dangerous situations. Do as he says. Vlad King ordered as he readied his fists. 13, protect the students. He told 13, who nodded at his request, as he and Aizawa were getting ready. Everyone, get ready too. Ren said to his teammates with great seriousness. Right. The Hero Force Rangers said together in unison, as they got in front of the class with very serious expressions on their faces. Scylla and Kuroka followed suit as they flared up their powers before the threat in front of them. Kuroka was hissing aggressively as her instincts were screaming danger with the appearance of the villain, as she could feel Tamura's bloodlust from all the way up the staircase of the entrance. Scylla has similar thoughts and feelings as the Yukai cat about the threat in front of them, with her glaring coldly down at the human son below the staircase who dares to attack her MSTR and his friends. The students were confused as to why their classmates and teachers were acting like this before something caught Tetsu's attention and made him gasp. Whoa, what is that thing down there? Tetsu pointed out with the rest of the class noticing it as well, with their gazes down below at the plaza. From behind Tamura, Kurojairi's warp gate expanded wider with more not-so-friendly looking people coming out of the portal, as they began to fill the plaza. Who are they? Pony asked while seeing more people were walking out of the portal as Kirishima got curious too. Wait, is training starting already? I thought we were rescuing people. Kirishima comments, attempting to lean forward. Tommy honestly felt a piece of him snap from the callous statement. Did they truly not realize the situation? Are you humans really this dumb? Scylla stated in a deathly calm tone but icy harsh, one that attracted the attention of the teachers and students alike. Why would they shout for you all to stay put and her to protect you? And why my MSTR and the other rangers are so on edge? This isn't a part of the lesson. She observed all of the gathered villains with a critical steely glint in her eyes. Her claim seemed to send a riveting shock to most of the students, all which had been silent until now. They sent each other unsure and confused glances. She's right, stay back. Aizawa shouted while making some of the students flinch in surprise from his tone, as he took steps to the front staircase and putted on his goggles. This isn't a lesson. Those are actual villains. It seems like Aizawa's words did the trick and all the students let out gasps of shock and fear while some even entered a combat stance, namely Ren, Midoriya, Yui, Kendo, Owaze, Momo, Tokoyami, Jiru, Scylla, Kuroka, Bakugou, Kamakiri and Todoroki. As the students were reacting to the thought of facing real villains, Tommy couldn't shake the familiar feeling as he detected multiple familiar energy signers coming out that portal and all over the USJ facility that were similar to the monsters the Ranger fought against. No, it can't be. Tommy thought with great worry as they were finally here. I wished we had a little bit more time to prepare, but it seems that the war has finally begun. He knew this day would come, but didn't expect it to be so soon. They thought they were practicing saving other people's lives that day, but when they appeared, every student realized that they were the ones in danger. And for the Hero Force Rangers, they soon realized that their greatest enemies had returned to conquer their world. Yokohama City, afternoon. A few moments ago before the invasion on the USJ. Tomura grinned as he looked around the warehouse at the villains he had been able to recruit for this job. All of them wanted to kill All Might, and with the promise of a lot of money, they all joined without a moment's hesitation. He had almost 200 minions and they were starting to get antsy wanting some action. The Decay villain then looked at his phone to check the time excitedly at the fact it was almost time for them to go attack the overhyped UA. He looked around to Kurojiri standing up straight waiting for orders. He looked over to see the Nomu awaiting his every instruction as a good little pet should. It had been created to be his ultimate trump card. An all-might killer. The only thing that was bothering Tomura was the unknown two people who arrived dressed in full hooded robes. He was told by his MSTR that they were members of the United Alliance of Evil, which would provide them with extra muscle, not to mention they had their own mission they needed to fulfill for Lord Draken. He scoffed at this since the Nomu was more than enough to handle All Might and a bunch of snot-nosed brats. Oi, noobs, Tomura called out to the robe figures. When they didn't respond, Tomura growled and moved closer to them. Hey, I am talking to you. He reached out to grab them by the shoulder to get their attention. Tomura was surprised as the longer robe figure quickly stretched out his arm, which was a golden armored gauntlet that grabbed him by the wrist. He nearly fell to his knees when they started squeezing his wrist tight enough to nearly break it. You will not touch her, you filthy little human. The figure that sounded like a male's voice said in a low menacing tone. If he hadn't stopped you, then you would have lost your arm, you dirty monkey. Tomura was surprised to hear that the other robe figure had a woman's voice underneath the robe. The male figure then let go of his wrist, withdrawing his hand back into his robe, with Tomura jerked his arm back before sending the two ranger villains an infuriated glare. Where the hell is Thrax and the rest of your party members? They should have been here already. Tomura asked them in an impatient tone as it was nearly time for the raid and they were a no-show. Thrax and the rest of our forces will arrive in due time when they are ready. The female figure said with a devilish grin. So don't worry about it so much and focus on your own objective. Tomura remained quiet while glaring at her for a few seconds, before scoffing out loud. Just remember you two that I am in charge here, Tomura said before walking over to Kurojiri and looking at his phone again. Let's go kill All Might. As you wish, Kurojiri replied as he started opening up various portals and sent large groups to the different zones at the USJ as they had planned. While this was happening, the two alliance members watched from the distance, with the male figure turning his head to his partner. "I can't believe we have to take orders from this puny human." The male figure growled as he was annoyed to be ordered around by a stupid human. "I know, but orders are orders after all," the female figure said as she felt the same way as her companion. "Let him play with this world heroes, while we take care of the rangers. Besides, if he screws up then we have the right to punish that monkey." She lets out a dark chuckle before walking over to the other villains. "Fine, I'll tolerate this brat for now as long as he doesn't get in the way of us destroying the rangers," the male figure stated with a groan while following right behind her and already wishing this was through. But if it meant having an edge over those wretched rangers or getting them one step closer to Lord Draken's goal, then he had no choice but to ally himself with such feeble, lesser-minded beings. Kurojiri opened the last portal for them to enter the main courtyard of the USJ. Tamura walked into the portal first with the other villains and Nomu following right behind him, with the two ranger villains being the last ones to enter. Unforeseen simulation joint afternoon. When Tamura stepped out of Kurojiri's warp gate, he immediately took in his surrender to find the one he wanted to kill while the army of villains came through the portal. "The only real heroes I see are Vlad King, 13, and Eraserhead," Kurojiri said with Nomu and the two ranger villains coming out of his warp gate to stand next to Tamura. "Perplexing. According to the schedule you retrieved from UA, All Might should be here as well," he said before slowly morphing his body into a void itself being a body of some sort. Aizawa glared at the villains moving toward the students and teachers, while also hearing what Kurojiri. "So it's as we suspected. You sums used the press as a cover and sneaked onto campus to steal our schedule to learn when and who we will be here today," Aizawa deduced out loud, connecting the dots of said instance. "Figures. We were right to assume that no one in the media could have a quirk strong enough to break through the barrier," Vlad King said, clinging his fist in rage. Tamura started scratching his neck as he continued to look around the USJ. "Where is he? I went through the trouble of bringing so many friends who were eager to meet him," he asked as he kept looking around for his target. The decay villain noted Eraserhead, Vlad King, 13, and both the hero course classes from the schedule list he had stolen from UA last week. He also noticed that there were two adult women he didn't recognize at all but paid it no mind since he thought Scylla and Kuroka were just mere NPCs of no importance. Tamura looked back at Kurojiri before speaking to him. "They want All Might. The great symbol of peace. I can't believe he's not here." He was furious that he had received faulty quest info. "He may be running behind," Kurojiri replied, trying not to sigh. The Power Rangers couldn't help but feel their jaws drop slightly at the Hands villain's words. They're here for All Might, but that would mean. They all thought in concern. One would have to be extremely stupid to even think about taking on the symbol of peace like this. Sure, the occasional villain would try their luck against the number one hero, thinking they would have a chance with their quirk. But it always ended the same, villains would lose to All Might in a matter of seconds. But these villains came here because they must be confident enough to do so, which made the Rangers go cold as they turned pale slightly. Unless, they realize. Each Hero Force Ranger thought as they tightened their fists and narrowed their eyes at the villains. Tamura sneered at that. "I see, but maybe if I kill a few kids, he'll come out to play," he said coldly and started imagining the bodies of the worthless NPCs lying all over the place when All Might arrived. It just might be enough to break his spirit. Upon hearing that sentence, Aizawa activated his quirk and had his capture scarf rise up with his hair while Vlad's piles on him were filling with BLD and shifted it into weapons, with 13 keeping everyone, the Rangers included, behind her. The fact he said that so nonchalantly and loudly for all of them to hear sent shivers down quite a few students' spines and infuriated the Rangers. "Kill as many as you can. Let's see how long it will take for him to arrive," Tamura ordered his army of villains as they moved toward the students and staff except for the 2 alliance members. "Oi, I told you to go kill them," he said, grinding his teeth at their inaction. "Silence, human," the male figure said aggressively while taking out a sword at the villain. "We came here to crush the rangers to dust. Everything else beyond that is meaningless," he stated to the villain. "My friend here is correct. We're here to hunt down specific targets." The female figure said a menacing smile while looking at Hero Force Rangers before turning to face him. "So don't get in my way or else," she said with a cold tone of seriousness before she and her male partner left the group of villains to do their own mission. "TCH, this is why I hate playing co-op mode," Tamura said in irritation at how his party members weren't listening to him. Aizawa and Vlad King were getting ready to fight the army of villains alone, with the Hero Force Rangers, Scylla, and Kuroka willing to jump in too to help the heroes. "Real villains? No way," Kirishima questioned in disbelief. "How could so many of them get into a UA Felicity this secure?" he asked, wasn't getting how they could be so vastly outnumbered. "The answer to that question is pretty obvious," Ren said, getting everyone's attention on him, except for his teammates, teachers, Kuroka, and Scylla, who didn't take their eyes off the incoming villains. "It's because of the break-in last week." He then got multiple gasps from his classmates who didn't know the truth about the break-in. "What does that have to do with anything? I thought it was the press who broke into the school." Monoma asked the quirkless boy. "Think about it for a moment," Ren said to the blonde boy with a stern expression. "These villains knew we would be here at this time, which means they were the ones who broke onto campus and used the press as a cover to steal one of our school schedules to learn when and where we would be. Plus that black misty villain down there has some sort of teleportation quirk that lets him teleport him and others to anywhere they want, which would explain how they were able to leave the campus without knowing until the last minute and break into the USJ with any army of criminals," he pointed out to everyone. After hearing the Ranger's words, the students were stunned and began to realize that the villains all along who were the cause of the break-in incident last week. "WWE gotta do SS something. WWE need T to call back you up," Mineta said in a scared tone. "Wait a minute. If the villains are here, shouldn't the alarms sound off already?" Shiozaki asked as everyone looked around to see that no alarm went off. "Yeah, that's right," Toru said, shifting to the front of the crowd of students. 13, why aren't the alarms going off?" she asked the hero. "Good question," 13 replied while shifting her head back to the student. "But I'm not sure," she said, making some of the students gasp in surprise and concern. "Must be some sort of jamming device then," Momo said, figuring out the problem as to why the alarms didn't go off. "Something that would have to be an area of effect quirk, large enough that it could cover the whole building but not too big as to draw attention so as to cut off our means of communicating with the outside world for help." "It's like what Ren said," Midoriya said as he glanced down at the villains, his eyes landing on the largest one with purple skin. "They planned for this, knowing we would come here with only a few teachers, but knowing no other hero would come," he said, latching onto his friend's idea. "I couldn't agree with you more on that statements," Todoroki said with a calm look on his face and getting everyone's attention on him now. "Is the entire campus under attack? Or is this their only target?" he questioned, mulling over the possibilities as to why they're here. "Either way, if the alarm sensors aren't being triggered, then one of those villains must have a quirk that's masking their presence here. They carefully chose this isolated facility as an entry point at a time when a class was being taught. They're fools for trespassing here, but they thought this out. Whatever their plan is, they must have a concert objective in mind. But what is it?" Todoroki finished as most of the classes flinched at the idea that the villains had something in mind. "But what is it?" "They're here to kill All Might," Scylla said in a serious tone, grabbing the teachers' and students' attention. "That's what the human with the hands all over his body just said. Kill All Might. That's impossible," Mineta exclaimed, his legs shaking showing his obvious fear. He wouldn't be saying that if it were, Scylla said while pointing out a fact. They knew we were going to be here with all might, yet they still decided to attack. No person with even 1% of common sense would do that, unless they have a serious plan that could counter him. She stated much to everyone's horrors, but the Rangers, to learn that the villains were here to kill the #1 hero. She right, Aizawa thought grimly, as no one would be crazy enough to attack a school full of pro-heroes without a plan. That blue-haired villain said the same thing, but how they're going to do it is what worries me. He gritted his teeth thinking about what the villain's plan was to kill All Might. All Might was powerful sure, but even he had his limits and could be killed. The guy is only human after all. That's bullshit. Bakugou shouted, snapping everyone out of their thoughts and onto him. All Might's the #1 hero for a reason. He never loses, especially to a bunch of shitty villains. He said, dismissing the idea of his idol losing to anyone. Yeah, All Might wouldn't let himself get killed by these villains. Kirishima said with the same level of enthusiasm. There's no way. And if he were here right now, he would tear these villains a new one for sure. Kamakiri said in agreement. Don't underestimate our symbol of peace. Monoma said, pointing at the demoness. Soon everyone else made similar comments about how it was impossible for All Might to lose. But the ones who remained quiet at the thought of the symbol of peace losing were Kuroka, the Rangers, and UA teachers, as they remembered All Might's condition and how much time he had left as a hero. Also, they weren't that naive enough to believe nobody can't lose despite how powerful they may be. If you all truly believe that, then you kids are naive fools, Kuroka stated in a slightly cold but serious tone, making the students' protest go silent. She looked at them with her hazel eyes sharper than usual as her playful nature had completely vanished. I know that this might be hard for you all to accept, but despite all his amazing power, All Might is still human at the end of the day. He isn't a god, he is a man who has his own limits and weaknesses. He can be killed, injured, broken, and get sick just like anyone else in the world. She stated to them while trying to get the point across, as she had seen real God before and knew that All Might wouldn't last long against them. That's one of the main problems with this world. You humans think of yourselves as almighty beings just because you're born with superpowers and treat All Might like he's some kind of unstoppable god. Scylla said with an equally cold tone, like her Nekashu company. But at the end of the day, despite all of your abilities, nobody is invincible. You're all still human, and that also applies to All Might too. The Aetherius finished. Hearing this made the whole class, but the Power Rangers stood frozen in place with widened eyes as they thought about the Aetherius and Nekashu words. Some tried to deny their words, others began to accept the logic, while some were still having a hard time processing the idea of All Might losing to anyone. Aizawa glanced back at his students and saw the seeds of reality being planted in their minds. He couldn't agree more with the Aetherius and Nekashu's statement that All Might and any other hero in this world wasn't unbeatable. These brats needed to learn that nobody is invincible and that even the strongest can still be defeated too. But this wasn't the time for that right now. If what Silas said was true about the villains coming here with a plan to kill All Might, then that was even more reason to get the students to safety. 13, Aizawa said, breaking everyone out of their thoughts and stepping forward to the front of the staircase. Get them out of here and alert the main campus. He said to her, but soon realized something. Actually, if they have the ability to block our sensors, then they might be blocking our regular communications too. Kaminari, try using your quirk to connect the school. He told the electric quirk user. Yes, sir. Kaminari said as he went to his headphones to call for backup. Hold on, I have a better idea of contacting the school, Ren said, stopping Kaminari and getting everyone's eyes on him. His gaze went to Kuroka before speaking up to her. Kuroka, use your power to head back to the school and warn them about what's going on here. He told her. Kuroka nodded to him with a serious expression before using her magic to summon a purple circle underneath her feet. Right, leave it to me. Kuroka said before vanishing in a purple light, as she transported to UA for help. It's a good thing Kuroka was here with us today. Holotami viewed the flirty Nekasho as a big sister type who cares for those around her even without showing it. Embarrassing and overly flirtatious, true, but Kuroka also knew when to be serious and supportive. Whoa, she's gone. What happened to her? Sato asked with everyone but the Rangers and Scylla being shocked at what the Black Nekasha just did. Kuroka just used her power to teleport back to UA and get us some help, Ren explained calmly to everyone, who didn't know about Kuroka's abilities. Much more convenient and quicker than trying to call the school, when they're blocking all means of communication to the outside world. Nice thinking, Amamiya. 13 complimented her student for his clever thinking. It won't take long before the other pros arrive, but we still can't relax just yet. She said gazing down at the incoming villains who were getting closer to them by the second. Come on, Vlad. We have villains to take care of. Aizawa said with his focus on their leader with the blue hair standing next to the bird-looking thing. Right behind you Eraser, Vlad King said to his fellow teacher, as he stood next to him. He had a bad feeling about that bird-looking thing, as it looked like one of those monsters that the Rangers fight against. Ren saw what his teachers had in mind and he didn't like it one bit. Wait, Vlad and Eraser. He called out, making the pro-heroes look back at him. We're coming too. He said seriously with his teammate in agreement. No, we won't allow you kids to put your lives in danger, they're the only teachers and pro-heroes here, Vlad King said to them in a stern tone. Are you serious right now? You know what we're capable of. Ren said to him with an irritated tone. We fought against things way worse than those villains down there. He's right, sirs, Tokoyami said joining the convention. Our strength will be greatly needed for you to deal with these villains more easily. And I don't think they'll give us much of a choice, Momo said in a low tone while looking at the villains. Which is exactly why you need to protect everyone else, Aizawa said making the Rangers pause for a moment as he continued to speak to them. You said it yourself, they knew about us being here and planned this attack out. Even if we do escape the building, chances are they might have another group outside waiting to abuse us to cut off our escape route. He said to Rangers firmly. This made the young heroes in training eyes widen in shock as they never considered the possibility of an abuse waiting for them outside. That's why we're trusting you Rangers with the others' safety while we deal with this villain in here until backup arrives. Vlad King said adding to the conversation. They're right, Holotami thought as he couldn't argue with that logic. If the Rangers stay to fight the villains here, it would leave their classmates defenseless for impossible abuse. I didn't even think about that, Yui said in a low tone with her head hanging down a bit. But still, what are you two going to do facing that many villains? Midoriya asked his teachers with worry. You guys can't fight all of them on your own. Even if you can, your fighting styles and curics aren't suited for long-term battles. He argued with concern. Midoriya's got a point. Taking on that many will eventually wear you both down and leave you defenseless. Jiru said seeing her teammates' logic. At least let some of us stay with you to fight those villains. Aways protested to the pros. I agree with them, please don't do this sirs. Kendo pleaded with them. Humph, don't underestimate us, pro-heroes, kids. Vlad King smirked at his students. My main concern is you kids and your lives. He said to them in his teacher's tone. Let this be another important lesson for you kids to learn. You can't be a pro if you're only a one-trick pony. I thought you would know that the most of all problem children. Aizawa said to the Rangers before giving them a tiny grin on his face. We may not be Power Rangers, but we'll be damned if we're going to let these villains harm any of you. He stated in a serious manner. Ran looked at both of his teachers and could tell they were serious. Eraserhead may seem like he doesn't care and Vlad King can be a hard assess at times, but they truly care for their students, which is why they're so hard on them to prepare these kids for the real world when they make it as heroes. That's why they weren't going to let a cabal of villains harm their students before they had a chance to shine. Ren can only just sigh in defeat before speaking. Okay, we'll leave these villains to you both and protect our classmates if there are more enemies waiting for us on the outside. He said to him. Thanks, kids. Vlad King said the students with a relieved tone at how they listened to them. But I still feel like I should give you both some little extra insurance to help with those villains, Ren said with a smirk before looking at the ethereous woman. Scylla. He made her stand at attention. Yes, MSTR. Scylla said, awaiting his orders. Go help Eraserhead and Vlad King take care of the villains, Ren said to her with a serious tone. As you wish, MSTR, Scylla said, bowing her head and pushing herself up. I'll make these foolish humans regret ever coming here. She said in a calm, emotionless voice with a slightly icy undertone, causing everyone but rangers and teachers to flinch. Ren then looked at Aizawa and Vlad King, who looked like they wanted to say something before he said to them first. I know what you are both thinking, but hear me out for a moment. Scylla may have been a bad person in the past, but she's changed now and her macro curse will be a big help with fighting those villains. So please just give her a chance to prove herself. Ren asked his teacher to give the Aetherius a chance. Aizawa looked at his student and then the demon woman for a moment while going over his thoughts. Having one more person there will help lift the burden of fighting those villains, especially given the demonic woman's power to control others against their will. He was still skeptical about a former criminal helping them, but he had to remember that some of the former villains that the Power Rangers had faced and become one of their greatest allies. After going over his thoughts, Eraserhead just lets out a heavy sigh, hoping he will not regret his choice later, and decides to put his fate into his student judgment about the Aetherius's change of heart to the side of good. Fine, you can come with us, but don't kill any of them, only knock them out. Aizawa ordered the demoness. Very well. Scylla said, nodding fearlessly at the man, and walked up next to the two pro-heroes. The hell? Why is Hornby allowed to fight? I want to fight too. Bakugou yelled angrily at how the former villain was allowed to fight but he wasn't. That's enough, brat. Vlad King shouted at Bakugou, which shut him up. This is neither time or place for your whining. Scylla is the only one allowed to come with us. Everyone else is to evacuate with 13. He yelled back to Bakugou, who is pissed off for not being able to fight. We'll leave it to you, 13, Aizawa said to his peer, as 13 nodded in response before his gaze fell on the Rangers. And, Rangers, keep everyone safe for us. He said, getting a nod from the team too. Stay close to us, and remember no killing. Vlad King ordered the Aetherius. Scylla remained silent but nodded back in response, as she was secretly looking forward to punishing these foolish humans for threatening her MSTR's life. Then out of nowhere, the MSTR morpher started to glow black and then red before fading away, with Ren, Midoriya, and Holotomi's eyes widened in surprise as they were the only ones who noticed it. No way. Mr. Aizawa and Vlad King. Midoriya thought while gasping. Have been chosen by the MSTR morpher to be Rangers. Ren has similar thoughts, as his green-haired friend with his eyes on his morpher in shock. Nice. Now things are getting interesting. Holotomi mentally thought in joy at seeing more Ranger candidates. The two pros and Aetherius then leaped down the stairs toward the army villains at high speed, with Aizawa graving his capture weapon, Vlad King pouring more BLD from his body, and Scylla having a cold-hardened expression on her face, as three villains were waiting for them down below at the staircase. Shooting squad, take your aim. A villain with a helmet and gun barrels in his fingers announced to the two other villains beside him while readying his quirk to shoot down the heroes. Didn't our intel say it would just be 13 and allmight? A female villain with Medusa-like hair said while grinning at two men and a woman coming at them. Who are they? She asked while her long gray hair floating upward stated. Don't recognize them, a large ox horn villain with a sap green costume and gas mask replied while watching Aizawa, Vlad King, and Scylla running toward them at an incredible speed. But if they think they can take us down easy, then they're dead. He said in a cocky tone. Let's shut them down. The three villains prepare to brutalize Aizawa, Vlad King, and Scylla as they get closer to them. But before the villains could get the chance to use their quirks on the incoming heroes, Eraserhead activated his quirk with his eyes glowing bright red and stared at all the villains in his line of sight that deactivated their quirks. The villain with a helmet tried to use his quirk but then noticed that he couldn't, much to his confusion. Huh. My quirk. The guy said in a confused tone while flicking his wrists and looking at his finger barrel. Huh. The female villain with Medusa-like hair screamed in surprise too, as her hair suddenly stopped moving and was covering her whole face. Where are my bullets? The big ox horn villain exclaimed in confusion as to why his quirk wasn't working. At that instant, the two pro-heroes and Aetherius took advantage of this opportunity and struck at the confused villains without mercy before they could regain their senses, with Scylla leaping at the biggest of the three villains and kicking him hard in the head, while Vlad King used his BLD to make a hardened left fist and punched the villain helmet square in the gut, and Aizawa used his capture weapon to wrap around the female villain's body before pulling the scarf hard to pull the woman in the air and sending her crashing towards the floor at high speed, as the three cocky villains were knocked out cold instantly by the two hero teachers and Aetherius. The other villains in the plaza gasped in surprise to see their allies quickly defeated so easily, with Aizawa and Vlad King retracting their scarf and BLD while Scylla stood straight up from her kneeling position, as the three stared down the shocked villains bravely without any worry or fear on their faces. Idiots, that's Eraserhead. A pro. He can cancel your quirks just by looking at you. And the other is the BLD hero, Vlad King. His quirk lets him manipulate his BLD however he likes. A random villain shouted out, as he recognized the UA teachers. But who's the woman with the horns? She doesn't look like a pro. Another villain asked as they noticed Scylla with the two heroes. Doesn't matter. If she gets in our way too, then we'll kill her as well. A female villain stated out loud, only to make the Aetherius scuff in annoyance at the villain's little threat. Cancellation. A black-faced villain covered in rocks and had 4 arms exclaimed before charging towards Aizawa. Bet you can't erase the quirk of a heteromorphic type like me, can you? The villain stated with confidence at the hero's weakness, then lunged at Aizawa in the air for some punches. Yeah, you're right. Aizawa said while easily avoiding each one of the forearm man strikes, before punching the villain square in the face with enough focus that the forearm man was sent propelling into the air. But a villain like you is only dangerous if you can reach me. But Eraserhead wasn't finished with the villain just yet, as he then threw his scarf at the forearm villain and wrapped it around his right leg to catch him, right before dodging a punch from another villain attacking him from behind by leading backward. Good thing. He said while counterstriking with a swift kick to the face and sending the villain back into 2 other villains behind him, as they fell down on the floor together in a pile. I've taken measures to make sure that never happens. He then pulled on his scarf to swing the forearm man downward and onto the pile of villains, he knocked over earlier like a wrecking ball as the impact created a dust cloud and took the men out for good, with the hero retrieving his scarf. Now which one of you gutter punks is next? The Eraser hero said with a stern tone while glaring at the villains behind his goggles. Before Aizawa could say anything else, a female villain with a snake for a head rushes Eraserhead to bite down on the pro from behind, but Vlad King intervenes in time by using his enhanced speed, as the BLD hero then throws a punch to the snake villain's face, sending her flying towards the dome's roof and falling down to the ground painfully. Don't forget about me, you criminal scum. Vlad King shouted and used his quirk to inject his BLD into his gloves before hardening them into tick gauntlets, then started to punch the lights out at every villain in his line of sight, with the criminals letting out cries of pain. I don't know what you were hoping to accomplish here, but you fools picked the wrong place to break into. He lets out a mighty battle cry while slamming his right arm into another villain with enough focus to toss him right at several others who were charging at him and taking them all down in the process. UA will never submit to villains. These humans are pretty decent fighters. Scylla thought while watching the two teachers taking on a group of villains without much trouble. After observing those humans fighting, the Aetherius could immediately tell that the villains have no chance at beating the UA teachers. Unlike Aizawa and Vlad King, these human criminals have no real skills at all when it comes to using their quirk or any combat experience to speak of and were easily defeated by a single blow. All they had were numbers and nothing more, which isn't enough to defeat any of them here. Pathetic. And they'd thought they could kill the symbol of peace with numbers alone. Scylla thought with a sigh of disappointment, as the low-level villains remind her way to much of the dark guilds she used to destroy back in her old world. This is why I can't stand most humans. DMN, they're good for a couple of pros. A large villain with a rhino body said in irritation before noticing that Scylla was just standing there doing nothing, as an evil thought came to his mind with the man now grinning madly and rushed at the demon like a rampaging rhino. Woman, you're mine. The villain declared as ran at full speed, intending to crush the horned woman without mercy. Just before the rhino villain could get his hand on her, he stopped dead in his tracks a few inches in front of Scylla with a look of shock on his face. What the hell just happened? Why can't I move my body anymore? The rhino villain exclaimed in confusion while finding it difficult to move his body. You're no match against my macro, Scylla said, a tone deprived of any emotions, as she ordered the rhino villain to start attacking the other villains. Arg! The rhino villain lets out a painful cry and begins to ruthlessly charge at a good number of villains while taking them out in the process, much to the other villains' shock at one of their own turning on them. What the hell are you doing, idiot? We're on the same side. A random villain shouted out at the rhino villain before getting knocked out with a punch by said villain. I swear this isn't me. It's like my body just stopped listening to me all of a sudden. The rhino villain stated as he was having a hard time trying to get himself to stop while laying waste on the other villains against his will. A female villain with gorilla arms was glaring hateful at the Aetherius and was going to attack her next, but only for both of her gorilla arms to suddenly raise up in the air without warning, and slam down on two villains right now next to her that shocked her and the other villains as well. What's your problem, you crazy bee? You turning on us as well? A female with horns hair shouted at the gorilla arms villain. The gorilla arms villain had a panicked look on his face before speaking. No. I didn't mean to do th-. She didn't get a chance to finish her sentence when more villains in the plaza lets out painful screams, as they turned their heads towards the it. The criminals saw A with a laser quirk started shooting at the other's villains without warning, with the villain crying to make it stop as his body wasn't obeying him anymore. Then soon after that even more villains began to suddenly attack their allies with much warning, as the USJ Plaza soon became a free-for-all brawl with the villains under Scylla's macro curse started fighting against the other villains that were spreading confusion and chaos among the League of Villains forces. You lowly worms should be fortunate that I'm not allowed to kill you all right here and now, Scylla said coldly while using her macro curse to force some of the villains to attack their own allies. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to make you all suffer in agony for your idiocy and threatening my MSTR. She said as there was no stride of mercy in her tone or actions. The two UA teachers paused for a brief moment and saw the chaos that Scylla was causing towards the enemy's forces with her curse. Glad she's fighting on our side, Vlad King whispered to Aizawa, who heartily agreed with his fellow hero. Yeah, makes our jobs more easier. Aizawa said before knocking out another villain that was wrapped in his scarf. Meanwhile, the only three villains that didn't take part in the battle were watching the Aetherius and two pro-heroes demolishing their army without much issue, also while seeing the villains they recruited started turning on one another and began fighting each other. Arg, just what the hell am I seeing here? Tamura exclaimed in annoyed to see his army of villains fighting each other instead of the heroes. Why the hell are our party members suddenly fighting among themselves like this? This wasn't supposed to happen. And yet the man's eye would only twitch in frustration as he slowly saw his lackeys get picked off by themselves or the two heroes and Aetherius. I don't know myself, but if I had to take a guess it must have something to do with that horned woman dressed in the blue kimono. Kurogyri said as he sees that Scylla was the only one not fighting against their army of villains, while Eraserhead and Vlad King were. I don't recognize her, but she's just standing there doing nothing and I'm pretty sure that she's the reason why our men are fighting each other instead of the heroes. He said, thinking that it was the woman's quirk at play here. Oh. Then she must be some kind of spellcaster class character to have our party turn on each other like this. The blue-haired man said with little interest, his eyes lazily fixated on the demon woman. But if this keeps up then our entire party will be whipped out before we can even get the chance to face the final boss. So where the hell is Thrax and those monsters he promised us? They should have been here already. The villain said with irritation at how the alliance members were late for the raid. Have patience, Tamura Shigaraki. I'm sure that they are on their way as we speak. Kurogyri said, being the voice of reason to calm him down. Remember what our MSTR said about them. Humph, whatever. It's not like I was counting on their help anyway, since Nomu is all we need to kill All Might. Tamura said, glancing at the giant creature by his side, as it gave no response whatsoever, it simply stood there with empty eyes. Then the decay villain's eyes shifted back to the battlefield in front of them and continued to watch the one-sided beatdown on their side, as the heroes were gained the momentum in the battle. There they go trying to intimidate us. They are strong with Vlad King hardening his BLD into weapons, and since Eraserhead hiding behind those goggles, you can't tell whose quirk he's erasing. Plus that woman with horns is making things even more troublesome for us by controlling our party members against their own will. Those three are making it hard for us to work together or relay on each other's powers. Tamura stated as he observed the two heroes and demon manhandling his goons with no problem. He understood that pros at their level completely outclassed these low-tier villains that he brought along. How annoying. He said annoyingly as he scratched his neck. The worst thing about dealing with pros is when they live up to their hype. Kurogyri squinted his eyes while watching Aizawa captured another villain and pulled him before punching him out cold, Vlad King trapping a group of villains in his hardened BLD, and Scylla forcing the more villains to attack their allies without hesitation. Kurogyri. Tamura said, getting the warp villain's attention. In the meantime, go deal with 13 and those brats hiding up there. It'll be a real pain if they escape, and contacted the other pros. He ordered to his companion. Yes, Tamura Shigaraki. Kurogyri said before warping away, leaving Tamura alone with Nomu as he continued to keep his cold eyes on Eraserhead, Vlad King, and Scylla. But unknown to them, Scylla was secretly keeping an eye on them this whole time and witnessed the misty villain teleporting away and immediately knew what Kurogyri was planning on doing. DMN, the most troublesome one of the three, got away before I could use macro on him. Scylla mentality cursed to herself while biting on her bottom lip in frustration, as she glances up at the staircase to the entrance. MSTR, please be careful. Back up at the staircase to the entrance, Ren and Midoriya couldn't help but be amazed at the fight down in the plaza. Whoa, they're holding them off. I guess I shouldn't have underestimated them. Midoriya said in amazement as he watched the two homeroom teachers and Scylla handle the mob of villains. Mr. Aizawa is even stronger than I thought, and the teamwork between him, Scylla, and Vlad King is incredible. Man, they are kicking some serious butt down there, and Scylla's macro curse is also playing a huge role, Ren commented out loud at witnessing Aizawa and Vlad King fighting skills, along with Scylla helping them by controlling the villains. They may not be Ranger, but those two differently earn their titles as pro heroes. Holotami thought as he was beyond impressed by the two UA teachers' fighting skills. Despite being outnumbered and outpowered, Aizawa, Scylla, and Vlad King were pushing the villains back with near ease. Ren then shook his head and his eyes hardened at his friend. Come on, Midoriya. They got this under control, he said to the green-haired boy, breaking him out of his thoughts. Right. Midoriya nodded back in agreement before they ran back to the exit together with their whole class and 13. However, before they could get close to the exit, a circle of black smoke suddenly appeared on the floor and rose up from the ground while growing in size. Seeing this made the whole group come to a halt with 13 gasping in surprise and some of the students of both class 1A and 1B to froze in shock or fear. There is no escape for you, Kurogiri declared while raising himself from the ground and above them to make himself look twice as large because of his quirk. As the man blocked their only escape route to the USJ, I'm afraid I cannot allow any of you to make a getaway. This is bad. 13 said, whispering deeply as she stood firm between the villain and her students in a defensive manner to keep the kids safe. This is the one with the teleporting type quirk. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kurogiri addressed the students and UA Hero in an oddly polite tone while standing between them and the building entrance. We are the League of Villains. I know it's impolite, but we decided to invite ourselves into this haven of justice to say hello. And besides, isn't this a fitting place for All Might, the symbol of peace, to take his last breath? He said, explaining the League's purpose here today to the heroine and students in a surprisingly gentlemanly manner, but it didn't help much to calm their nerves as they could feel the warp villain's yellow eyes held malicious intent. As Kurogiri was talking, mostly every one of the students there looked up at the mist villain in fear, shock, or anger, as this was the first time any one of them ever encountered a real-life villain, except for the Rangers who just glared hatefully at the Kurogiri. So you want to kill All Might, huh? Humph, good luck with that since it's almost impossible to defeat our symbol of peace. 13 said in a challenging tone with narrow eyes. Oh, we're well aware of the strength that All Might possesses. Which is why we came here with the perfect weapon to terminate him. Kurogiri replied back in a calm manner. But speaking of All Might, where is he anyway? I believe he was supposed to be here today, and yet I see no sign of him. There must have been some sort of change in plans we could not have foreseen. He said as to curiosity why their target wasn't here. Ah, well, in the end, I suppose it doesn't matter. I still have a role to play. 13 didn't like where this was going and decided to act before the villain tried anything. So she raised her right while pointing a finger at Kurogiri, as the glove on 13's hand opened a hatch on her index finger and the pro got ready to use her quirk black hole against the enemy to restrain the villain. However, she wasn't able to get the chance as something unexpected happened next. Bakugou, Kirishima, and Tetsu impatiently lunged at Kurogiri with mighty battle cries, which surprised everyone presently there at their classmates' sudden action, as the three boys used their powers to launch a strike attack the warp villain with Kirishima and Tetsu swinging their hardened arms, while Bakugou letting out a powerful explosion from his hand, making a huge blast that managed to cover the area in a dark smoke cloud. What are those morons doing? Ren yelled out in frustration at the three dumbass actions, as he and the others shielded themselves from the smoke, mostly from Bakugou's quirk after the attack was done. Like hell, we will be defeated by A.F. Villian. Bakugou taunted the villain, thinking they got the BSTRD. Bet you didn't see that one coming, did ya? Tetsu shouted as well with a grin. Did you think we were just gonna stand around and let you tear this place to shreds? Kirishima asked with a challenging tone. Ren continued maneuvering his eyes around the clouds with his teammates doing the same. While they were, the Rangers were able to detect something moving from within, and they could immediately tell that it was the villain. You live up to your school's reputation. A chilling calm voice said through the smoke cloud, which made many of the students' BLD run cold while Bakugou, Kirishima, and Tetsu tensed up when they heard the warp villain's voice. As the smoke began to dissipate, they saw that Kurogiri was still standing there with his misty body reformed back into shape and that he was totally fine as Bakugou, Tetsu, and Kirishima's attacks had no effect on the man, which made them look concerned. But you should be more careful, children. Otherwise, someone might get hurt, Kurogiri said as his glowing yellow eyes narrowed menacingly. He looks unfazed by their attacks. Ren thought in worry until he noticed a metal brace around the villain's collarbone, as didn't see that before now that most of the mist from around his body was gone. Could that be his weak spot? You three, get out of the way right now. 13 ordered them, as she was unable to use her quirk with the three of them next to the villain. I'm afraid it's too late for that, hero. Another menacing voice shouted out of nowhere, which started some of them there. But before they could say anything, a purple beam of light shot down next to Kurogiri and showed it was Thrax, which not only surprised the students but even made the Hero Force Rangers and 13 look in disbelief to see a ranger villain here. No way. It can't be. 13 said with wide eyes as she at the figure in front of her and recognized the monster from Ranger history. Thrax. Midoriya shouted as he and the other rangers were in disbelief and shock at seeing Thrax alive. DMN, it's Thrax. Holotommy thought in concern at someone like him here. Thrax then immediately pointed his staff at Bakugou, Tetsu, and Kurashima, and fired a beam from its direction at the three boys that hit the ground, causing an explosion that not only hurt them but also sent them flying backward toward their class with Bakugou, Tetsu, and Kurashima letting out screams of pain. Tetsu/Kurashima/Bakugou. Mostly every one of the UA students screamed out in worry at seeing their classmate getting hurt by the new villain. Ha! Pathetic, children. Thrax mocked the three boys. Oh, I see that you finally made your appearance, Kurogiri said as turned his gaze to Thrax's direction. Yes, our forces are here and have infiltrated the whole building, Thrax said to the warp villain. That's good to hear, Kurogiri said as he looked back at the hero and students. At the same time, Bakugou, Kurashima, and Tetsu were trying to stand back on their feet, with some of their classmates helping them. Damn it. Bakugou groans out in pain while glaring angrily at Thrax. I'll kill you. What the hell was that? Kurashima asked with Mina helping him back up. I don't know bro, but it looks like someone new just showed up, Tetsu said feeling hurt from the blast, as Pony helped him up. That was very reckless of you three. Next time, leave it to me to handle things. 13 chided the three boys, with Kurashima and Tetsu feeling ashamed and Bakugou scoffing in irritation. Agree. Holotommy thought with a nod at how foolish it was for those three to charge in blindly like that. Bakugou, Kurashima, and Tetsu didn't wait for Kurogiri to make the first move, as the three of them attacked him with all they had. Holotommy only sighs in disappointment at the students' foolishness. If they were facing someone much more powerful, they would be dead. In battle, you must know the enemy's capabilities and skills in combat. You can't just attack randomly and hope for the best. That is why no matter how strong you may be in this world, one must take time to know, investigate, and plan for any opponent they may face. 13 looked like she was about to do something until they had to miss it up. Holotommy thought as Rangers got in front of the group to confront one of their enemies. Thrax. Ren shouted as he got the two villains' attention. Rangers, perfect, Thrax said with a grin before taking a step forward to them. If it isn't the Hero Force Rangers. He taunted the ranger. So he knew who we are then. Tokoyami said not liking this one bit. Looks like it, Jiru said with a concerned tone. How are you even still alive? Ren asked at the son of Zed and Rita. You're supposed to be dead. Yeah, you were destroyed by the Sentinel Knight. Kendo said remembering his death by the Overdrive Ranger's history. Evil such as mine cannot disappear forever, Thrax said bragging in a triumphant manner. And it's not just me, but the entire United Alliance of Evil has returned. He said making the Hero Force Rangers' eyes widen in shock at the name alone. That's impossible. The Alliance was defeated years ago by the Space Rangers and Zordon's Z-Wave. Midoriya argued back, remembering how the United Alliance of Evil was beaten. The Z-Wave is one of the most important and famous events in Ranger history, as a massive amount of good magic and grid energy was unleashed by Zordon after sacrificing himself to destroy the forces of evil for good. When the Red Space Ranger Andrus destroyed Zordon's energy tube, it released a powerful wave of good energy that spread across the local solar system, which either purified or destroyed all the evil beings and monsters in the universe. That may be true, but this a new united alliance of evil. One much more powerful than the last one. Thrax said, correcting her. And this time you won't have that fool of a wizard. Zordon helps to stop us this time, Rangers. He said with confidence while angering the Ranger. So they are the Power Rangers the Alliance meant. Kurogiri thought as he looked at each of the Rangers and noticed that they were still only children before his sight landed on a certain student. But why does he look so familiar? He looked at Ren with curiosity, as he felt like he'd seen him somewhere before. Meanwhile, 13 and the other students from both classes only continued to stand there and listen to their conversation in worry or curiosity at how their classmates knew this villain, with 13 being the only one to understand what they were talking about and Bakugou looking pissed at how they know this villain. What the hell are they talking about? Do they know each other? Bakugou mentally questioned while narrowing his eyes in suspicion at the Rangers and Thrax. I'm going to get an answer from them one way or another. He was seriously pissed for being left out of the loop and not knowing anything. Enough, 13 shouted at the Ranger villain. Just who do you think you are, and what reason do you have for being here and attacking my students? She demanded. Thrax only lets out an evil chuckle in response and decides to introduce himself to this world inhabited. Allow me to introduce myself first. I am Thrax, son of Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed. I am a member of the United Alliance of Evil and the orchestrator of your doom. Thrax announced with a voice that was somehow both cold and calculating, while at the same time vile and vicious. And for your second question, the Alliance has decided to team up with the League of Villains on this operation to destroy our number one enemy. He said, freaking out some of them that there was another group of criminals here, except for a few with Bakugou, as he had enough of listening to the villain. Shut the hell up, you patch-face freak. I kill you before you can even get the chance to fight All Might. Bakugou yelled at Thrax, as he was being held back by 13 to prevent him from attacking the enemy again. You cannot do that, so stand down now. 13 ordered the boy. Huh? Why the hell not? Bakugou replied back with anger. Ha ha ha, you are a fool child. Thrax laughed at the blonde human, which only PSS'd the boy off even more. Well, it is true that the League of Villains came here to kill All Might and that we're working together because our goals align, but the United Alliance of Evil could care less about your world's symbol of peace, as we came here for a different reason altogether which has nothing to do with All Might. He stated to them, that silenced the students and pro-hero. They were bewildered by the Ranger villain's words, as they thought these Alliance guys were here to kill All Might like the other villain group but had something else in mind for being at the USJ. The real question was what it was and had a feeling they weren't going to like the answer to Thrax's question. Then what do you want? Pony was the brave one to ask first but in a frightened expression. We want to be part of the end of the Power Rangers. Thrax said with an evil smirk, causing every one of the students in both classes to gasp, as they all turned to Ranger's direction and looked at the colorful heroes with worrisome expressions. They're here FF for them? Mineta asked in a scared tone. But why? Whatever their reason is, it can't be good, Ida said, feeling a great bit of concern for his fellow classmates' safety. The Hero Force Rangers for the most part weren't that much surprised by what Thrax said but were just plain irritated and mad. Yeah, should have known it would be something like that, Momo said with a sigh of frustration. Like we haven't heard that before. Aways yelled while rolling his eyes. At least try being original, dude. And yet, your kind always failed each and every time. So how will this be any different? Kendo said back while reminding him about who he and the other villains failed to kill the Power Rangers. Yui said with a glaring nod. Thrax frowned at Rangers, giving her a nasty look before looking at Kurogiri to see he was already setting up something in mind for the students. But why do you want to kill them? Toru asked, not liking the idea that a villain was there to kill her boyfriend and friends. What have they ever done to you? Her words got Thrax's attention back onto them. Because, unlike your stupid joke, you call the symbol of peace and the rest of this world's pathetic heroes, every single member of the United Alliance of Evil sees the Power Rangers as a real threat. Which is why we're going to exterminate them all here and now before they can have the chance to ruin our plans of the world conquest. Thrax declared their goal to them. This made everyone who was not a ranger look terrified and shocked that another group of villains was there to kill their classmates, but not all might, as they see the rangers as more of a threat than even the number one hero. But don't you worry, young heroes. We haven't forgotten about the rest of you brats, because killing you is just a bonus, Thrax said, making the students look terrified before raising his staff in the air to summon a platoon of ranger foot soldiers that surrounded the kids and pro-hero. The grunts comprise of grinders, quantrons, putrids, batlings, cyclobots, putties, vivics, henchmen, and tenga warriors. Oh, CRP. This is not good. Ren commended as he and the other rangers got into fighting stances to prepare for the worst, as the rest of the class looked either scared or shocked to see monsters summoned around them. There's a lot of them. Tokoyami said, looking at the monsters old ranger teams faced before. And they don't look friendly either, Gyro said, as it looked like the grunts were really to attack them at a moment's notice. Groups of grunts stand before the ranger, pro-hero, and UA students with malicious intent, while confusion is heavy on most of their faces, as if many were trying to make sense of their change of scenery. Wow, what are those things and where did they come from? Cozy Eye asked in a freak-out manner, with them surrounded by ranger villains from every angle. Are those actually monsters? Reiko asked while taking a step back in worry. I don't know, but they look even more scary than those villains back there. Mina said with her eyes widening at all the monsters around them. I don't want to die a version yet. So somebody please save us. Mineta cried out in terror, as fear of death began to take over himself. 13. Momo yelled to the rescue space heroine while getting her attention. We can deal with this, guys, you to focus on getting the rest of the class out of here. Alright. 13 said with a nod, knowing that those monsters were out of her league. She took a step back and focused her attention on protecting her other students. I'll leave this one to you, Rangers. She shouted to the Hero Force Ranger, shocking the rest of the class, as she was allowing them to fight against the villains. Hey, that's not fair. Why is it that they are allowed to fight? Bakugou yelled angrily, as he was pissed off for not being allowed to fight. Because this is something only they can do, so don't even think about it. 13 warned the boy, as Bakugou gritted his teeth in rage from being unable to fight. Deku. Uraraka said, worried about her boyfriend and friends. Kurogiri, if you would so please. I think it's time we start the fun. Thrax suggested to his fellow evil partner. Gladly, Kurogiri said as he was about to carry out the next phase of their plan. I'll scatter you around this facility. To meet my comrades. And your death. The villain continued while launching tendrils of black clouds shooting forward at the class and circling around them, which encapsulated the whole group like they were in a tornado storm. Inside the black cloud, the entire class's vision was covered as they were wrapped in darker forms of the mist that formed a massive dome-like shape mist. CRP, what is this? Kirishima asked while he and the others shielded their faces with their arms. I can't see anything. Setsuna yelled out while having a hard time seeing. Ren could feel himself beginning to sink towards the ground, and the mist was making it hard for him to move as he noticed that his classmates were beginning to sink as well. As he began to sink, the boy took notice that some of his classmates took action before being swallowed up by the villain's quirk. Ida jumped into action as he ran, then took both Uraraka and Sato out of the mist. Shoji grabbed Siro and Mina and shielded them with his body. Aways pulled Juzo and 13 by their shoulders and dragged them out of the mist in time too. The ones who were unfortunate were sucked into the fog as it forms a dome. The lucky ones who made it out in time began to take notice of the mist dome in front of them that held their classmates. "What's going on?" Ida asked in worry. "Our classmates are still in there. We gotta get them out." Juzo yelled out in a panicked tone. "No. If we go in there, we could be teleporting with them as well." Zero shouted in concern. "So we're just gonna stand here and let it happen?" Uraraka asked while standing on her knees. "We got no choice. Otherwise, we'll just get sent away too." Aways said as the students looked down, not knowing what to do at this point as the students from inside were about to be teleported away to who knows where. "It's gone," Shoji said in frustration at his classmates being teleported away by the rap villain. "What did you do with them?" 13 demanded, aiming a finger at the villains, readying her quirk. "You need not to worry, hero. I just scattered your students across this facility, as our forces will be sure to take good care of them." Kurogiri said ominously in a cold tone. "It would be troublesome if one of them were to alert the heroes before we kill All Might and the Power Rangers." "Well, the joke on UF fart cloud." Aways quipped angrily while pulling out his ninja star blade and pointing at his foes. "Because help is already on the way. And when they get here your asses are grass." "What do you mean by that, Ranger?" Thrax asked with narrow eyes. "Someone already left the USJ to warn the school about this attack before the two of you even showed up here to stop us," Juzo explained to the criminals. "I see. Then it's only a matter of time before this place is flooded with pro-heroes from UA, Kurogiri said as his eyes narrowed. "Then let's be sure to give them something to look forward to when they arrive," Thrax said with an evil grin before raising his staff. "At the humans. Get them." Then the Ranger foot soldiers charge at their opponents with the intent to kill, as the 13 and the other UA students there prepare to face an enemy they never encountered before, with all fighting back as best they could against the monsters but were struggling, except for Aways who was in his element right now. Aways screamed with a mighty cry as he blocked a henchman's spear and then a battling sword before pushing the monster out of the way to block another strike by a Quantran's blade. Aways' next action was he slid his sword across the Quantran's blade before cutting the grunt with a swift cut, then swung his blade at other grunts around him to take them down and clash with their weapons. A putty got a lucky hit in from his back, making the Ranger fall over on his back and letting a Grinder, Putrid, Cyclobot, and Vivix that were nearby him to attack the boy, only for Aways to spin himself around on the floor to use his legs in a series of breakdance-like moves to kick all of the foot soldiers away from him. "Man, you guys really don't give a person the time to think." Aways stated while using this as a chance to regain his footing by cartwheeling away from the monsters that surround him. Aways then performed a series of backhand springs before backflipping in the air to avoid a Tenga's punch with acrobatic movements. When the boy landed on his feet he took the fight back to them and pulled out a number of metallic logs from the bags on his belt while tossing them all at the monsters. The Ranger wasted no time and rushed to the grunts and swiftly moved his arms at a rapid speed to use his quirk to fuse the metallic logs and foot soldiers to interconnect them on an atomic level, which sticks the grunts together with small steel logs and making it harder for them to move their bodies. The Ranger took this opportunity to slash all of the immobile minions in a matter of moments and made them explode into dust, as Aways gazed at his classmates having a rough time dealing with foes that the past Rangers faced. As much as Aways wanted to help them, he knew there was someone else there more dangerous to take care of than worrying about his friends and teacher at the moment. He then turned his attention to face the Thrax with his eyes narrowing in a burning rage. "Thrax!" Aways yelled out while running at the villain to fight him. Thrax returned the favor as the two began to duke it out with their weapons, hitting one another and dodging each bow delivered with such skill that surpasses everyone else there, as Kurogiri stood back to watch and see what role he should play in this battle. "You're not strong enough to best me alone, Ranger." Thrax taunted the boy as he was a few inches away from him. "Shut up and eat my entire peach." Awase screamed over him in wild elation as clashed his weapon against Thrax with the both of them fighting. Landslide Zone, Afternoon. Meanwhile, one of Kurogiri's wrapped gate manifests itself above the landslide zone, a zone that simulates sloped terrain with building remains. Soon Ren emerged out of the black vortex and began to fall down to the ground. Thankfully, Ren landed straight on his feet like a cat while in a kneeling position, and the moment his feet touched the ground, the ranger started looking around to take in his surroundings. A sloped terrain with various debris scattered across allowed the quirkless team to deduce he was in the landslide zone. But he was still pissed off at those three morons for recklessly attacking that villain Kurogiri without a good DMN plan. The concept of think before you act really doesn't apply to certain people. I swear if those idiots survive this, then I'm going to wring all three of their necks. Ren mentality thought, growling in frustration at his dumbass classmates for getting everyone teleported to different parts of the USJ and putting them in even more danger. Okay, calm down. Getting angry wouldn't solve any of his problems. He needed to have a clear mind to do anything. The ranger can get angry later, but right now he needs to calm down and analyze the situation calmly. Closing his eyes, Ren began thinking about the situation he and the others were in right now. Then a sound from behind him made Ren immediately pull out his legacy saber while turning around to bring it to the person's throat. He stopped suddenly when he saw it was Todoroki, who seemed to have made a blade of ice, pointing it at him. They stared at each other before Ren sighed and put his blade back. Just you then, Ren said, a little relieved he stopped his blade when he did. Sorry about that, I'm a little on edge right after everything that's been happening. He apologized while pulling away his blade. I don't blame you, Todoroki said, getting rid of his ice blade, as he wasn't upset by his classmates' actions. I saw you get sent here along with me and came over. He stated with Ren standing back up. Hey guys. Both Ren and Todoroki turned their heads to see Toru calling out to them, and with her were Rin, Kozai, and Bondo as they made their way to them. It's good to see you here, she said with them gathering around. So you guys were sent here to then, Ren asked as he didn't see anyone else with them. So it seems, Kozai said with a sigh. Looks like that misty guy must have separated us from the others. And since we're still in the USJ, then it's safe to say that the rest of our class mighty have been scattered around to different zones like us, Rin said with a frown. But why do that? Bondo asked in confusion. To pick us off one by one. Thought it would be easier to overpower us in smaller groups. Todoroki answered, most to their discomfort. That makes sense, Toru said in a nervous tone. Hopefully the rest of our class got sent somewhere that will give their quirks the advantage. Ren thought out loud, before thinking about something that irritated him. Those DMN idiots. He hissed. Okay, he was still a little angry at Bakugou, Tetsu, and Kurishima's stupidity and needed to take his anger out on something. By those DMN idiots, do you mean Bakugou, Tetsu, and Kurishima? Todoroki inquired. Who else? Ren said while scratching his head in irritation. They just can't do stuff like that, he exclaimed, looking at the others, who looked at him confused as to what he was talking about. Do what? Toru asked the ranger. Shoot first and ask questions later. That's how people get hurt or worse killed, Ren said to them with an angry glare. That villain, Kurogiri's quirk allows him to warp not just himself but other people, too. Not only that, but his entire body is made out of mist, meaning physical attacks against him are useless, he explained. That's true, Todoroki acknowledged while adding his own 2 cents. 13 could have handled the villain, but instead those 3 screwed everything up. Kozai finished with a mad expression. Exactly, Toru agreed with anger too. I would expect this type of stupidity from someone like Bakugou, but Tetsu, and Kurishima. No, they're not stupid, just plain dumbass. Tetsu and Kurishima both seem more like the hot-blooded types, while bakugou is a special kind of dumb that will jump head first into a fight regardless if his opponent is stronger than him. Rin explained about the three idiots. The other can't help but agree with the Chinese boy's statement about bakugou, but Tetsu and Kirishima f everything up for them too. Putting that aside for the moment, you really think these villains can kill All Might? Toru asked as some had unsure looks on their faces. I just can't imagine the idea of someone as strong as him being killed. They seemed sure about it or else they never would have come here. But whatever their reasons, it doesn't matter. Ren said with a serious tone. I say we locate the others and plan a counterattack on these villains. He suggested. While I'm on board with some payback, I'm still curious about that Thrax guy and why he wants you Rangers dead more than All Might, Kozai said with the others looking at Ren, as they wanted some answers from him too. Thrax was an enemy that the past Rangers defeated years ago before our team was formed, Ren explained to them. Believe me, I'm just as confused about this as you guys are. But if what Thrax said is true about past Rangers villains being revived and somehow how ended up in our world, then things are about to escalate from bad to worse with the entire planet now in danger. He said with every one of his classmates shocked at the gravity of the situation. Hey, there's a couple of the students over there. The UA students stopped talking and suddenly turned to see a group of villains before them, down below a landslide. Villains! Toru screeched at the sigh of the criminals while hiding behind the boys. And wouldn't you know it, that mist villain dropped something else off here right along with us, Kozai said in an annoyed tone. If he did the same to us then we have to assume he did the same thing to the others, Todoroki said with narrow eyes while stepping up in front of the group, ready for a fight. That was exactly my same thought too, Ren said, getting ready to fight too. Then the group heard monstrous groans before turning around to see the ranger grunts suddenly appearing behind them. It's those monsters again. Bondo shouted in fear. Looks like we have to fight these things as well, Rin said getting into a kung fu stance while making scales appear on his arms. Everyone be careful when you fight those monsters. Ren warned them with great seriousness. They're the same enemies that past rangers before us deal with. They act as foot soldiers for stronger monsters to order around. However, they don't have any notable powers except that they are slightly stronger than average humans and more dangerous than some regular villains. He said getting the message across to the others. I see. So they basically grunts. Rin called in realization. Who knew that your enemies would have something like this? Still don't take them lightly. While they are weaker than ranger villains, they can still take you out with numbers. Ren explained further. Sounds like you're speaking from experience, but thanks for the heads, Kozai said with a few of the villains who stepped forward to the students. Heh, just a bunch of kids. Easy pickings. A random villain said with a cocky attitude. And one of them is a girl. I can't wait to have fun with her. Another villain commented before licking his lips in a disgusting manner while looking at the female among the kids. Yeah. Toru lets out an uncomfortable noise before turning invisible. Keep that creep away from me. Okay, now I'm pissed, Rin said darkly while glaring at the villains. Same here, dude. Kozai said with Bondo also nodding in agreement at how that villain commented about their female classmate. Perfect timing actually, I'm pretty pissed off right now and need to take my anger out on something. Guess I'll thank that mist villain and Thrax for when we're done with them. Ren said with his eyes growing malicious at the incoming ranger's grunts before speaking up to his class. Hey Todoroki, Kozai, and Bondo. Since your quirks work well at immobilizing your targets, can you three take care of the villains below us while me and Rin deal with the other group of enemies? He asked getting into a fighting stance. Sounds sweet to me, Kozai said with a thumbs up. Leave it to us. Bondo relied back as the glue-like liquid began to lack from the 7 holes on his face. Okay, Todoroki said while glaring down at the villain's heart with a cold expression. Toru, keep yourself invisible and stay away from the fighting until this is over, Ren said as the invisible girl didn't have any combat training just yet at taking down these enemies. Alright. I'll leave it to you guys then. Toru said as the girl knew that she would only be in the way since she didn't know how to fight quirkless. Ready for this, Rin? Ren asked the Chinese kid of 1B with a serious tone. I was born ready, Rin replied back as he readied himself for the enemies in front of him. Then the two boys sprinted off towards the ranger enemies with the grunts doing the same, as they engaged in combat with each other. Multiple foes charge at Ren simultaneously to kill the ranger, only for him to launch a spinning kick in the face at the first opponent, which was a putty, and take it out with ease. Then he turns around to see a putrid wielding a club hand and attacking him from behind, but Ren stops the assault by grabbing the putrid's right arm and holding the grunt in place with an arm lock hold while making the monster struggle from the boy's strong SBMSN hold. While holding the putrid in place, Ren noticed a Cyclobot and Tenga warrior attacking him from his back and front side before countering with a back kick to the Tenga warrior's face and then leaping forward while still holding the putrid in its arm lock to kick the Cyclobot in the face as well, making the two ranger villains fly backward to the ground. Ren immediately proceeds to toss the putrid far away in his arms with a shoulder throw, then shifts his body slightly down to duck under laser shots with some of the grunts acting from long range with their weapons on his left side before the ranger spiral spins towards the monsters in the air and swiftly knocks the creatures out with hard kicks to their heads as the boy slowly lands on his feet like a feather. As he landed on his feet, a henchman jumped at the boy with its spear about to bust his skull in two. But Ren quickly shifted his body around in a combat stance and caught the spear with his left hand while stunned at how the teen stopped his attack so easily. The quirkless ranger didn't give the foot soldier time to recover as Ren turned himself toward the henchman and delivered a hard right elbow jab to the grunt's stomach, then finishing things up with a back kick as the henchman was sent away off the cliff while Ren still held on to the spear with his left hand, before using the said weapon to smack at a Vivix and Quantrant charging at him, which taking them out of commission. At least putting more of a fight, because I'm barely warm up here. Ren stated with a cocky grin before continuing to PND on the ranger grunts without mercy. Not too far away from the quirkless boy, Ren was firing the scales on his arms at the group of ranger villains, keeping them pinned down as best he could with his Chinese martial arts and occasionally dodging counterattacks. But it proved to be a challenge with them being tougher than he originally thought. Ren wasn't joking when he said these things were tough. Ren thought while keeping them in place, before glancing over the quirkless boy to see him smack a leg into his foe and sending them away. How does he do it? He asked before avoiding another attack on him. Meanwhile, back with Todoroki, Kozai, and Bondo group were busy dealing with the enemies down the hill. The villains were trying to climb up to kill the kids, but the three students were doing their best to keeping them at bay. Eat this, you stupid brats! A villain shouted while shooting rocks from his hands at the UA kids from the distance. No, you don't. Kozai stated before taking a deep breath and blowing forward to create a wide solid air wall to block all of the rock projectiles from reaching them. Other villains with long-range quirks also attempted the same thing as that other villain, but Kozai used his quirk to make an air wall to shield his classmates from an enemy attack, while also preventing them from moving forward up the landslide with air walls blocking their path. DMN. That kid really has an annoying power. A villain commented in frustration while trying to break through the solid air wall but with no luck. And if that wasn't bad enough for the villains, Bondo began to spray a glue-like liquid from the holes in their heads into the air, showering down onto the criminals' bodies. Once hit, the glue-like liquid immediately hardens up with either trapping villains or slowing down their movements with them finding it very difficult to move around. What the hell is this CRP raining on us? One of the villains tried to move but hardened glue was provided to make it difficult for them. As all the criminals struggled to advance forward to the students up the landslide, Todoroki made his move next as he wasted no time sending down a growing sheet of ice on the rocky ground surface and at the villains below. What? My leg! A random criminal screamed in shock, as his leg was covered in ice and began moving up the rest of his body to freeze him over. The other criminal met with the same fate, as Todoroki had frozen some of the villains before him without hesitation and stopped them from moving in their tracks with no way to escape. "Aren't you embarrassed to lose to a bunch of children?" Todoroki mocked the villains without remorse. "For God's sake, you're adults. Put up a real fight." "Yeah. I thought you wanted to kill All Might, or was that just all talk?" Kozai taunted the criminals. "If you losers villains want to kill us so badly, then you'll have to work for it. If you can't even beat us, then what real chance do you have against the symbol of peace?" Bondo added in. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 19. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.